Welcome to the FFY 2026 financial presentation for National Highway Traffic Safety Administration grants. Today, members of the State Highway Safety Office will provide grant guidance for administration of your award. We appreciate your partnership and all that you do for highway safety to save lives on our roadways. V-Trans is very thankful that NHTSA has once again funded our data-driven programs, and we are conducting today's required training. Here is our disclaimer that all of the things that we say today, we are doing to teach you how to administer your grant and also how to connect with us, the different things that NHTSA is looking for. So there's no way that we can address every single situation when it comes to granting, but we are putting out this grant training to try to help you as a guide. So if anything that we say isn't accurate or we have a lack of omissions, please understand that we are giving you the best information that we can and highlighting the higher level items. I'm Allison LaFlamme, Administrator of the State Highway Safety Office, and this is our Highway Safety Office team. I do want to just note that Sue Summers is in the photo. However, she did retire back in September, so she is no longer available to contact. But today we have joining us for this presentation, Danielle Record, who will be showing you a gears demonstration, as well as going over financial information. Robert Bigelow will be going over law enforcement and education programming. Evelyn McFarland is filling multiple roles. She is our deputy administrator and also serving as a contact for education programs. She and Rob are your contacts for all education programs, and we will continue that until we fill our position. Rachel Noyes is our outreach manager and public information officer. Our law enforcement liaisons are Bill Jenkins and Kevin Lane. And right along. Our agenda today, we'll do an overview of the grants management, fiscal guidelines, and requirements for grant funding. We'll talk about high visibility enforcement, media support, our gear system, and next steps that you can expect. The federal grant funding that you are receiving is provided by NHTSA. At the SHSO, we oversee and monitor the daily, monthly, yearly grant activities from application process to closeout. This includes reviewing grantee activity, monitoring grant spending, and compliance. Our role is to provide guidance to you to ensure that grantees run a successful program with the common goal of keeping our roadways safe. It's all about behavior change, right? So in addition to SHSO program guidance on NHTSA grants, we will invite grantees to review these resources, and there are live links within this PowerPoint. We will also provide the PowerPoint. Obviously, you can rewatch it, but we will provide a PDF version of this PowerPoint. And just wanted to call out that the State Highway Safety Office did receive, thankfully, you guys all wrote, partners wrote wonderful applications, and we did receive our AGA approval on September 18th. Given that late start date, we did issue advance notice to proceeds, and those have been in the process of being signed and executed. And we will continue to work on our grants, and we'll give you an update on that as well. Here is some grant guidance. And so we have rules and regulations both at the federal and at the state level. Items of note are the Highway Safety Grant Program Resources Guide, which is a link back to our website. And then we have uniform procedures that the grants have to follow as well. That started back in 2014, and there's new reiterations every couple of years from the federal government in 2 CFR 200, as well as 23 CFR 1300, which is specific to highway safety grants. At the state of Vermont, we have agency of administration bulletins that we must follow. Bulletin 5 was recently updated, the grant policy, as well as we have the procurement and contracting bulletin 3.5 that we must follow. So the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act will be revised next year. So we'll have further updates, but for now, the main umbrella law of the IIJA continues to regulate our programs.
So the SHSO grants follow the federal fiscal year. The grant activity start date is October 1st of 2025 for your 2026 grant fiscal year. The grant year ends on September 30th of 2026. Your final invoicing and fourth quarter progress reports are due on October 31st of 2026, and your final progress reports are due November 15th of 2026. And this is just a reminder that we are now at the end of our 2025 fiscal year, so those last two bullets here are pertain to this year as well. Your final progress reporting for 2025 should be you should be working on the final invoicing and progress reports, and then the final progress reports will be due on November 15th of 2025. Talk a little bit about cost principles. NHTSA awards, which are federal funds, must be in appropriate statute and must not be in violation of federal, state, or local laws. All costs must be necessary to support grant activity. Expenditures must be reasonable, outlined and approved from the grant application and in the grant agreement. If you have questions about the details of what was approved and how much, please do not hesitate to contact your program coordinator. NHTSA awards have strict guidelines, and with the management reviews, there are often more restrictions that need to be monitored. General cost of government, which is also known as supplanting. Every grantee must be in compliance with the general cost of government statute. Federal funds cannot replace routine or existing state expenditures and may not be used for the cost of activities and that constitute general expenses.
Any work performed on a grant must directly involve highway safety, and only approved activities will be reimbursed. Just a note that any contract for service hourly rates are not allowable on NHTSA grant programs for our law enforcement partners. We will not accept or reimburse contracted, vendor, supplier, or any other contracted hourly rates when doing invoice submissions. Training. So not all training is allowable. For training and conference costs to be reimbursable, the training must be an eligible expense under the NHTSA grant program, and it must be specifically included as an activity in an executed grant agreement. Training for a non-grant related purpose, such as to satisfy employer or professional certification requirements and compensation costs for the time spent at that training, are not allowable for law enforcement agencies or our traffic safety resource prosecutors. Travel and training. So travel that has been approved by the SHSO will be detailed in the sub-grant budget, attachment B, in your grant agreement. Travel that is specifically listed in your grant agreement must still be pre-approved in writing by the SHSO program coordinator. Not all training requests were funded in the application, so please check your grants. Law enforcement travel and training. So those agencies with no education grant, approved travel and training will be found in the occupant protection, most likely, or if it is specifically impaired driving related, it will be under the impaired driving grant budget. Most training, again, will be in the OP grants. For our countywides or regional project directors, approved travel and training is going to be found in the director's grant. If our countywide education grant holders applied for their subgrantees to attend training, that will be found in the community education grants for our regional directors. So reimbursement for GSA rates. Grantees must always follow their agency's policies, procedures for all travel, including purchasing airline tickets, hotel accommodations, conference fees, registration, etc. The SHSO will reimburse actual travel expenses that are not to exceed GSA per diem rates as listed on the GSA website, found below here if you want to click on the link. The subrecipient must provide the necessary travel documentation with reimbursement when invoicing. When it comes to mileage reimbursement, couple options. For law enforcement or others, we typically just use beginning and ending odometer readings for activity sheets. Remember that mileage rate is most likely going to change January 1st. We will update our partners when that happens. Currently, the rate is at 0.70. And for our regional project directors, just contact your program coordinator for specific guidance required reimbursement documentation. So what kind of backup documentation do you need when invoicing for conference and training? You need the agenda, you need a certificate of attendance, copies of prior approval emails from your program coordinators, proof of mileage, including a map using Google Maps or Waze or whatever it is, and receipts for all expenses, excluding meals.
For those grantees who have requested funding for hosting a conference, training, or food and beverage, we require that you refer to your grant agreement to make sure that your conference or training was approved in the grant. And if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to Rob or I or one or the program coordinators to make sure that this has been approved. Federal grants allow reimbursement of meetings and conference costs, which can include the meals, the transportation, the facility rental, and other incidental costs and costs related to speakers. Just keep in mind that the primary purpose of the conference or training has to be the dissemination of highway safety information. Records must be maintained to document the purpose of the meeting, and there are a few requirements for the hosting of it that I'll go over in the next slide. Conference and training, when it's with regards to food and beverages, there are some criteria that must be met. The conference must be a day-long conference or training, and again, for traffic safety programming only. The cost of the food and the beverage should also be pre-approved, and work with your SHSO program coordinator for information and approvals for those. This activity, of course, must be in the grant agreement. I had said that before. As much as you can before the conference or training, give a detailed agenda of the workshops. If you can't give it, if you can't give the detailed before, make sure you follow up with that in the invoicing itself. We do require a list of attendees who will be present at your conference or training. And it does also require an invoice from the conference center or the vendor, whoever is providing the services that are a part of that conference or training. And lastly, if there's a meal being served, a highway safety speaker must always be speaking during that meal for covering the costs of those items of food. Go to the next. Examples of some of the unallowable costs in your grant are pretty straightforward. I won't go through all of these, but there are some that we just do want to stress, which is that anything that is office furniture, filing cabinets, etc., are unallowable with your federal grant funding. You also cannot use the funding for sponsorships, contributions, or donations to another entity. Fundraising costs are also unallowable. Swag, things that are giveaways, such as coins, keychains, pencils, etc., are not allowable. And also we do want to also remind everybody that e-ticket or e-citation paper is not covered by the grant funding. If you're ever in doubt about whether something will be able to be reimbursed, again, please check with us first, and we'll let you know if you're going to be able to put that through on your invoices. Next slide.
So we're going to talk about supplies versus equipment. First, starting off with supplies, these are really the costs for administrative materials and supplies that must be used in direct support of a project. Supplies really is an item that costs less than $10,000. It's important that we clearly identify what is a supply and what is equipment on our in our grant applications. Um, the supplies you buy must only be used for work that is related to the grant, like you cannot buy office furniture, things like that. Um, Unallowable supplies we are often asked about include uniforms, t-shirts, hats, challenge coins, swag, stickers, those kind of things. Um, Next slide. Equipment, on the other hand, is items $10,000 per unit, $10,000 or more. For approved equipment requests, remember to reach out to your program coordinator. If equipment is approved in your grant application, remember that there is still a process that needs to be followed before you purchase any equipment. You're going to need a letter from NHTSA approving the purchase of any equipment. Um, Always remember to follow your agency's procurement and purchasing policies. Always look for Buy America Act compliance. Again, NHTSA approval. Reach out to your program coordinator if you have been approved for equipment, and we will go through the process together. Remember that any supplies or equipment should be purchased early on in the grant year so it can be used for that year's grant work. Equipment, like supplies, must only be purchased for highway safety purposes, and must be used for only the purpose for which it was purchased. And when purchasing equipment and you need to track it, log it into some type of inventory so that that can be presented if we are doing site visits or auditing purposes, those kind of things. When we talk about supplies and equipment, so there are items such as computers or camera systems, in-car camera systems that require what we call a proportional study or time study. So cameras or other items that require proportional studies will only be funded a certain percentage that they're used for highway safety activity. Before purchasing the equipment or supplies that require personal funding, you will need a justification letter and you will need to complete the time study ahead of time before purchasing the equipment. In the grant agreement, whatever equipment or supplies you're asking for that may require proportional funding, please list the total amount of the item, not what the proportionally funded amount is. And proportional funding requirements do not apply to equipment such as radars, LiDARs that are 100% highway safety related. If you have any questions regarding proportional funding, please reach out to your program coordinators as always. Sharing time studies or proportional studies between agencies is not allowable. You cannot adopt just a flat percentage and say that that's good. We need to see the methodology, any supporting documentation on how you found the proportional funding amount. There may be instances where your authorizing official will submit a letter certifying 100% highway safety use. You must have SHSO approval to complete purchase and NHTSA approval. Again, if the equipment or piece of equipment is over $10,000. And this also, remember, that includes installation, shipping, those kind of things are also included. So if the total is 10,000 or more, it does require prior approval from NHTSA. This is just a real quick sample activity sheet. I have sent these out to all our partners, so you should have them for the new grant year. If you do not, please reach out to myself at Evelyn. We can get you those. They need to be filled out completely. Always check to see if there's any mistakes on the activity sheet. It will show an error at the top. That's the way we have it set up. So yeah, just reach out to your program coordinator if you need any more.
So match is a requirement of this program. We are required to provide a 20% match for the funds that we spend. We do lean on the grantees to help us provide that match. Thankfully, our sheriff's departments do provide a ton of match for us, and we thank them for that. But for those that are still required to provide us match, some examples of match are you can use operating such as office space, as long as that office space is not paid for by grant funds. Indirect cost rates can be used as match. So say you have an 80% indirect cost rate, but you're only requesting 20% of that indirect cost rate to be reimbursed. You can use the remaining towards your match. You can also use third-party services. And an example of that would be if you had a booth at an event and you have a person volunteering to work that booth, you can look up online how to calculate reasonable value of a volunteer to find out the dollar figure that you could put on that time and use that as match. Indirect cost rates. So in the newer piece in our grant applications is an indirect cost rate page. So if you do have an indirect rate, whether it be a federally approved rate with your cognizant agent or a de minimis rate, you need to have that page filled out with the indirect rate amount and the indirect rate amount that you'll be asking for reimbursement for on your grant agreement, and the approved letter uploaded on that page. If you could please check your budget summaries to make sure that the indirect rate amount that is on there is correct, because I know some agencies might have their indirect rate reapproved after application time before execution time of the grant agreements. So you just want to make sure if your indirect rate did change in between those two events to make sure it's updated in the system. And for those, especially with the de minimis rate, supplies, you can charge your de minimis indirect rate too, but you cannot charge that against equipment. So just make sure you're calculating your indirect rate correctly when you're asking for reimbursement for equipment on your invoicing.
Okay, so this is a new slide in our presentation that we haven't done in past years, but we felt like we needed to address it because it's not a new item within the state of Vermont's policies. So the default is reimbursement in arrears for your grant agreement, whether it be law enforcement or education. So basically, the partner incurs costs and they pay the costs, and then they're supposed to provide proof of payment for services rendered. Backup documentation may include things like the general ledger, electronic accounting report systems like QuickBooks, a copy of a bank statement or credit card statement, timesheets, canceled checks, things of that nature. The SHSO will not accept documents that are a typed recap of expenditures. They need to come from an official accounting record of the subrecipient. Monthly invoices will not be processed without proof of payment documentation. The next slide. And then here we have what we call a cash advance. So some agencies simply do not have the cash flow in order to do a reimbursement in arrears type grant, and they must request a cash advance. You simply cannot just proceed without reaching out to us first, though. So like our regional program it's definitely understandable that they need to request to us cash advances because they have upwards of 10 or more partners in most cases. So how that works is each year you should reach out, the project director, reach out to your program coordinator requesting a cash advance via email. Doesn't have to be a special memo or anything, saying that you are requesting a cash advance for whatever year. This one would be the FFY2026 year. And then we will make sure that you have your agency as not behind on the subrecipient annual report and that you're not high risk. So there are a couple of compliance checks that we need to do on our side because we do that risk assessment every grant year with our partners, and then we do one again when we conduct amendments. So please, we need to make sure everyone is in compliance of this. So, fill out that quick email to Rob or Evelyn. It won't take us long to get right back to you to let you know that you have the authorization to receive cash advances from us. And then this is another piece too, that is that there might be special circumstances. So maybe you're not a regional program, but you have a big equipment purchase, like Rob was talking about, 10,000 or more, and that type of cash flow is difficult. So if you've received your letter in a separate email, send over to your program coordinator requesting that you have a cash advance for that piece of equipment. There's a caveat to all cash advances that we need to have. This is a state of Vermont rule. It's not our state highway safety office rule, that within 10 business days of you receiving the invoice, so you will invoice within gears without the backup documentation, but having the permission to do a cash advance, within 10 business days, you're going to provide by uploading the copies of the checks to the vendor or vendors to show us that you did not hold on to that money for too long and that you're in compliance with state rules to have that information back to us within 10 business days. And then this is just talking about the backup documentation requirement. So when you are seeking reimbursement, you must include all backup documentation no matter what. If you are, we need to see that the subrecipient has paid out their grantees. And we will follow up in either case in arrears or cash advance to make sure that we get that backup documentation. And if we don't have it, we can't, reimburse you. So when we have to, ask for those types of things to gather them, it just takes longer to process your payment. And trust me, we want to pay you as quickly as possible. So we know that there's a lot of backup documentation. We hear you. These are, federal requirements and our requirements to track data. There's a reason for all of it. So please send that information on over, including like quotes with your invoicing and email approvals. It just makes things go a lot quicker. And then our program coordinators don't have to do as much follow-up.
So your final award amounts are determined by NHTSA and the SHSO staff. You can confirm your funding amounts in your executed grant agreement. If you also look on the landing page of your grant application in the estimated approved amount, you can see what is most likely going to be your grant agreement amount, but your final amount won't come until the actual executed grant agreement is there. But that's where you can at least see where you think you're going to be at. We will be notifying partners if we have additional carry forward for amendments between February and April of the grant year. Amendments should be rare and only be approved under unforeseen or special circumstances. Equipment requests require a justification and a quote. And the SHSO does not accept an amendment that is for a new project. We will accept amendments that are for a slight change in scope of work or performance measures and a budget amount that needs to be updated. And we will not be accepting amendments after April 15th of the grant year.
Progress reports and grant evaluation. As you know, the grants are data-driven and they are evaluated when we score them based on the goals and the objectives that have been outlined in your application. And the performance measures and your goals and objectives are what are pulled into the grant agreement itself and are listed there and then become part of your progress reports throughout the course of the grant. So when filling out your progress reports, we'd like you to focus on the activities related to the goals and objectives that you had in your grant application, being as quantitative as you can in all cases. They are, as we said, they are due every 3 months, and then there is a final report, which is going to be summing up the entire year's activity and does then allow for a little bit more narrative in addition to the quarterly reports, which are more quantitative in nature. So the flow of the invoicing does require you to submit your quarterly reports in a timely way. And for instance, you must report every 3 months. So to open up invoicing for January, you must have completed October, November, and December invoices and progress report before the next invoice for January will open up to continue. Go to the next slide. We'd like your recaps and your information that you're giving us in the progress reports and the final report to give as much specific information as possible, including what were the grant activities that were accomplished, and we'd also like to know the things that you weren't able to accomplish and tell us a little bit about why, if that is the case. Give us as much information about who you engaged in the activities, whether it's education or enforcement. In either case, we'd like to know something a little bit about the demographics, the age, whether it's male, females you're engaging. So as much information on the who as well as the where the grant activity was focused. And that might be focused, say, on a highway, perhaps during a specific event, a high school during the prom, or whether or not it was even on a specific road or route that was identified as high risk in your grant. Tell us when the activity took place and the strategies that you addressed based on whether you identified the problem as being impaired or about seatbelt use or speeding, etc. And then also give a little bit of information about whether or not you feel you met the objectives that you set out and outlined in your grant. So were the performance measures met? And here's a little bit of a recap for the information that we have given up till now, remembering that all your financial documentation is due by October 31st of any given grant year. The quarterly progress reports are submitted every 3 months, with the final report having an additional 2 weeks after you're done with your financial documentation, so by November 15th. And also keeping in mind that once your grant is closed out in years, there are no exceptions for remaining expenses. In other words, if you have forgotten something and the grant is closed out, we will not be able to go back and include that and reimburse you for that. NHTSA does not allow for late reimbursement requests. We do send out a closeout letter that allows you to compare your information and reconcile it against the numbers that we have at the end to help you make sure that you have put through all of the reimbursement that you are expecting.
When it comes to monitoring and on-site review, SHSO program coordinator, along with LELs and other members of the SHSO, try to monitor and visit our grantees or partners once every 2 years to check in and look at compliance. Risk assessments are performed behind the scenes, really, but they happen before a grant is fully executed. When doing a site visit, program coordinator, along with LELs, will review internal controls and financial systems of our partners. Ahead of time, we'll provide you with a list of documents, equipment, call logs, anything that we'll need to see ahead of time. The site visits are used as a two-way street. We want to make sure that things are being done correctly and accurately, trying to make improvements where we can. It's a great time for our partners to ask questions, get clarification, let us know if there's anything we can do to help them out or anything we can do differently to improve the process. It's just that we're always continually monitoring our partners. Just wanted to give you a brief breakdown of that.
Program income. Program income is income that is earned by the grantee that is generated by a grant-supported activity. And we usually only have a few grantees that earn program income on their grant activities. But an example of it is if you are hosting a conference, for instance, and you have a vendor, let's say AT&T, who wants to come and table at the conference and wants to give you sponsorship funding for tabling at the conference. Since that conference is federally funded by the grant, that is considered program income. It must be reported and accounted for in that grant year. And since it is earned as a result of the award money, the funding that has been given to you, it has to then be used toward grant activities and recorded as such. If we go to the next slide, there's a little bit more information about what to do if you have earned program income. One way to do that is to just directly subtract it from the invoices that are related to the event that the income was earned on. So just to do an invoice reduction and let your program coordinator know that there's going to be program income and that it's going to be subtracted off of the invoices that are submitted for that month for reimbursement. Another way to declare program income is to show it as added to the federal award, not used specifically for the event that it was used, but it can be added as additional funding as part of the award, and then can be spent on other items that are approved as part of your grant. In other words, if you are approved to purchase bike helmets and give them out, you can use some of the program income to purchase additional bike helmets. So you're not necessarily restricted to the event it was earned, but with permission, always you can spend it on other activities that are grant related. And you can also use it for match if match is needed, again, only with approval of your coordinator. So please just communicate with us about program income. There are always a lot of questions about whether it is considered or not considered, and we're here to help on that front. In terms of the grant and education grants and what is allowable, just keep in mind that activities must be specific to the goals of the grant. And that includes things like community outreach, training specific to the activities that are part of the goals of the grant. But if your grant is sort of loosely defined as some of the activities that you're doing, you have various educational activities. Again, if something is in question about whether that activity is allowable as part of the grant, we want you to communicate with us to make sure that it is part of your grant agreement. Things that are not allowable, for instance, are meetings and activities that are not specific to highway safety grant activities, and that includes trainings that you might go to that aren't trainings specific to highway safety and specific to the grant activity. So if it is not listed in the grant agreement, it is probably not allowable. So make sure that you carefully read your grant agreement before before beginning your work as part of the grant. Fundraising activities are also not an allowable expense as part of your grant activity. Subgranting. And many of you have either subgrants or contracts. So just as we have rules and regulations as the federal entity that passes money through to the grantee, if you are then passing those funds along to another subawardee or a contractor, a vendor, you are now the pass-through entity, and you need to follow the same rules and regulations, by and large, as we do. So that means, well, following policies and procedures, in your case, for the organization that you work for. And when selecting vendors or procuring vendors, you need to do fair and impartial selection of those vendors. When you enter into a subaward agreement or a contract, they also must include attachment C, D, and E from the FFY 2026 grant agreement. The same attachments that we attach to your grant as the new pass-through, you attach them to your subgrantees' agreements and or vendor contracts. And those are the links that were provided earlier in the presentation. We are asking that if you do enter into a contract with a vendor, that you have detailed deliverables that you know are going to be in compliance with the grant agreement and are going to align with the grant's activities that are approved. And the subgrantee, the subawardee or vendor also has to evaluate and do final reports that have to refer back to the original performance measure, the scope of work. So everything needs to be in alignment all the way through the subawardee through the subcontract. And this is kind of a recap of the key points, remembering that monthly invoices must be processed before you can get to the next invoice. You can't do 3 or 4 in advance. And you also need to invoice even if no money was spent. This is often a question. Zero invoice, even if we are not paying you for that month, you need to push through that zero invoice through us. Quarterly progress reports, we went over that every 3 months to keep the invoicing flowing. And final progress reports, which are now in the GEARS program. I know that last year they had to be sent as separate PDFs, but they are now part of the program, just like your quarterly progress reports. If an expenditure is not in your grant agreement, it is not eligible for reimbursement. So always ask first if you are unclear. The money is allocated at the beginning of your award, and unused funds cannot be rolled over automatically to the next year. And I'm going to add to that I think Rob went over this. Please, if you are ordering supplies or equipment, the idea is that that is going to be used throughout the grant period. So do that at the beginning of the grant, not on September 15th when you realize you have the funds, but you haven't spent them yet. And travel that is in your grant agreement, even though it's in the grant, you do need to reach out to the program coordinator before that travel. So either Rob or me, with the information about the travel for further approval.
The State Highway Safety Office partners with NHTSA to promote 5 major high visibility enforcement campaigns each year. The 5 high visibility enforcement campaigns, or HVE campaigns, are the Distracted Driving campaign in April, the Buckle Up Seatbelt enforcement campaign in May and June, the Impaired Driving campaign in August, September, a second seatbelt enforcement campaign in November, and another Impaired Driving campaign in December and January. 4 of the 5 campaigns require participation as a condition of receiving a grant for that aspect of highway safety. For example, if you have an impaired driving grant, your agency is required to participate both in the Labor Day and the winter holiday impaired driving campaigns. If your agency has a distracted driving grant, then you are required to participate in the April distracted driving campaign. Thanksgiving remains an optional campaign regardless of which grant your agency has. but we appreciate and encourage participation as Thanksgiving is a very busy holiday, but participation is actually not required. The following is a minimum amount of hours that need to be worked in order to meet the high visibility enforcement campaign requirements. 16 hours for the May Buckle Up campaign, 16 hours for the August Impaired Driving campaign, 16 hours for the December January Impaired Driving campaign, and 4 hours for the April Distracted Driving campaign.
So just a reminder that you can use work on regular shift to assist in meeting the required numbers of hours worked as long as that time is focused only on highway safety. For an example, if an officer is on regular shift and patrols for impaired drivers for 2 hours on that shift, those 2 hours and the results of the patrol can be counted towards the campaign participation requirements. However, remember that those hours on regular shift cannot be billed to the Highway Safety Office. The hours and contacts would only be counted for the campaign participation. If the officer works overtime patrolling for impaired drivers, then the Highway Safety Office can be billed for those hours worked, and the results of the patrol can be counted for the campaign. This will require both a regular activity sheet and a campaign recap sheet filled out by the officer. If you have any questions about this, please reach out to the law enforcement liaisons, Bill or myself.
This is a snapshot of the NHTSA communications calendar. You can easily find the calendar online by using the link on the screen or by searching for it by name. You can use this calendar to look ahead and see which activities are coming up. Please take note that sometimes we will make minor adjustments to the dates of the major campaigns just to fit better with our local calendars. Each month, NHTSA highlights a different area of highway safety. In addition to the 5 major campaigns, there are a number of smaller one-day campaigns that are listed on the calendar. Some of the one-day campaigns are 4th of July, Super Bowl Sunday, St. Patrick's Day, and Halloween. Your goal should be to work at least 2 of the one-day campaigns in addition to the 5 major campaigns.
Okay, so switching gears to media. Bill just mentioned this website, but this is the traffic safety marketing website, which is where that calendar lives. It also has all of NHTSA's resources for the media that they've created to date. And they have been working hard to improve this over the last couple of years. So if you're looking for NHTSA specific media, the link is here at the bottom of the page to go, and you can look it up for any of the critical emphasis areas. For our own media, hopefully everyone has seen this, but if you haven't, this is a little snapshot of the Drive Well Vermont website, which contains all the media that we've created to date for the Drive Well Vermont program. So the site includes extensive information and resources on each campaign we've created, and we send all of our media traffic to this website for our campaigns. If there's anything that you're looking for to send when you post something, you can send your traffic to this page also. Basically just link directly to this page and people can learn more about different highway safety programs, and that link for the DriveWell site is right there on the left. So part of this DriveWell Vermont site is our media library, which includes every single asset that we have created to date for all of our DriveWell Vermont campaigns. So you can see here how many programs that we have created so far, and each of these, you can click on any of these programs here, campaigns, and go in, and there is a huge list of different campaign assets that are there for you guys to use. So you can visit the link here on the left, which will bring you to this page that you're seeing here, and then click in to grab anything that you might need for your social media posts for your department. We just barely finished upgrading this site, so if you have tried to use it in the past and didn't find it super user-friendly, it is really pretty great now. So please go in there and grab some materials and use them. They're all there so that you can take them and use them and just repost them on your own social media pages. And if anyone has any issues or has questions about this, please give me a call or send me an email. I'm happy to help walk you through this new media library. One of the other things on our DriveWell site are the toolkits, which we created specifically for our partners. Basically, we know that everyone has way too many things going on at all times, so we were trying to make social media posting and updating easier. So we created these toolkits, which have images, examples of images, and then examples of some text that you can just use and grab and post on your own social media site. So instead of having to come up with text or captions for photos, you can just come right into these toolkits and grab what you need and post them on whatever social media platform you're utilizing. And we have them for basically every platform that you might use in your department. And the idea is you can just go on here, grab what you need, post it, and then move on with your day. And if you are utilizing these and you feel like there's something else you might need or something that you think would benefit partners, please let me know. This is always a working project, so I'm happy to make any improvements that we can along the way. We also have some other resources within the DriveWell Vermont media. So we have created some posters, which we have on hand, and I'm happy to hand out. We have a general DriveWell Vermont, occupant protection, and older driver safety. You can see that on the left is an example of one of our older driver safety posters. We also have a lot of brochures. We have right now printed, we have impaired, occupant protection, and distracted driving. I have a new driver brochure that's finished that we are just working on printing, and we have them printed in these 5 languages that you can see: English, Spanish, French, Canadian, Arabic, and Dari. These are here for you all to use. So please, please, if you need materials, send me an email, call me. I am happy to either send these with our LELs to bring them to you guys, or I can mail them, or we can meet somewhere. But I have a lot, and I would love to get them in your hands if you would like to use them. So for approval, if you're planning to use your approved grant funds for any printed materials or created materials, just please be sure to send them to your program coordinator for review and approval beforehand. NHTSA requires that there has been previous approval. So in order for you all to avoid having to back pay for any items that you've had printed, just shoot your program coordinator an email. And then if there's anything that your department creates that utilizes the VTrans or DriveWell logo. So if you're building something from scratch, for example, a press release or a poster, and you take the VTrans logo or the DriveWell logo and you're planning to print or create something with that, I have to get approval through VTrans for the VTrans logo to be utilized, and we have to approve anything with the DriveWell logo. So please, please send that to your program coordinator, and they'll get it to me. If it's just downloading and using DriveWell materials as they are built on our site, you can use as many of those as you want. As if you edit them or try to change anything, or, as I said, reutilize the DriveWell logo or VTrans logo, that is what we need to see before it goes out, and we'll work on getting you approval for that. Just a little side note, if your department's sharing updates regarding grant funding purchases on social media, we would love and appreciate if you would shout out the Highway Safety Office or tag VTrans in that post. But just please note that we are not the Governor's Highway Safety Program anymore. We are the Highway Safety Office. So if you're referencing us, please be sure to reference the State Highway Safety Office. And then I'm sure you have all gotten some emails from me, but we have a listserv that has all of our partners on it, and I am more than happy to send out updates on the listserv if you have an event coming up or something that you'd like to share, or if you had a successful patrol, or honestly anything that you would like to share around. That is what that listserv is for. So please send it to me. I'm happy to send it out. And if you are not on that listserv and you would like to be, please let me know and I'll get you added.
Okay, so we're going to do a quick gears demonstration. So I'm going to get out of this and pull up the actual website. Okay. So here's the actual production gears system. Your login right here, grants.vermont.gov. Here's what your login page looks like. And just a reminder, if you have forgotten your password or your username, there is a link here that will bring you where you can put in your email address and your username and get a temporary password sent back to you via email. If you have a new user that is coming into your organization and they need to register, you can click here. And if you just hit the save button, it will, all of the required fields will pop into red. So just fill out the required fields. This will be asking you which agency you are working with. So make sure you put in agency transportation. It's helpful if you put in the notes what role you're looking for. Or if you have a specific grant that you're looking to be assigned to, that would be helpful to put in notes. So we know exactly where to approve you and what to assign you to. All right, so the rest of the, yes, I'm going to sign into our test. Okay, so I'm logged in as an authorized official. A reminder that if your dashboard's empty and you want to see your opportunities or your tasks, please get this set up. And the way you do that is you go into your edit dashboard and then you can add a panel. And like the announcement panel is missing, so I can save and add that panel here and hit save. Other things to go in through this drop down over here is your profile. So if you need to update your phone number or your email address or anything, you can go into your person information profile here. Also, insurance certificates. We'll take a look at that as well. For nonprofits and sheriff's departments, you are required to have the insurance information AOT form filled out within your organization. If you are a municipality that is insured by the leagues of cities and towns, you do not need to fill out this page. Our contract admin department has your insurance certificates on file each year. And if you're a state agency, you also don't need to fill out this page because state agencies are not required to provide insurance to each other. This insurance page is required by municipalities, or I'm sorry, nonprofits and sheriff's departments. You'll need your insurance information to be up to date in order to receive your grant agreement. So you'll want to go in, make sure that all of your policy expiration dates are current and not about to expire. So if you have if your insurance certificate is expiring in say November, you'll want to make sure you're keeping track of that date and that you upload an updated insurance certificate right around the time that your previous one is going to expire. So you'll want to refill out your policy effective dates and your policy expiration dates. You'll want to upload a new insurance certificate and you'll change the year up here it'll be for 26 currently. And then you'll want to save your insurance. One thing we were going to show everybody is how to get to their executed agreement. After you finally sign, we're going to look at a 2025 just as an example because we don't have anything executed for 2026 yet. But the place that the executed agreement is located on is going to be the same. And I actually have to show this in a in production. So you'll maneuver back into the landing page of your application, signed grant agreement. So once your document has gone through the signature process and is executed, the fully executed agreement will be uploaded, and there'll be a link here on your landing page under signed grant agreement. So if you need to go back to your grant agreement, you can take a look at it right through this area here. Then other than that, there for 2026, nothing has really changed in how you maneuver through your grant application into invoicing and progress reports. You will still be initiating related documents and initiating each invoice or progress report from the pop-up that comes up. One thing I will show everybody right now is the final progress report. Okay, so this one, it's already been initiated, but I'll just show you what it looks like. So we're looking at an enforcement and equipment grant. You'll initiate your fifth quarter progress report. So the fifth quarter, the final, it's within the progress report module. So it is shown as a fifth quarter, even though that's kind of silly. It is your final progress report. You'll go to initiate related documents. And as long as all of your invoices have been in a payment processed status and all of your progress reports have been completed, you'll hit the initiate related documents, and the final progress report will automatically initiate, because that's the last thing that there is to initiate under related documents. So once you've initiated your final progress report, you will have access to the form. Just hold for a second here. Sorry, I'm going to go into a live one because I'm having trouble seeing the form in production. So the progress reports mimic the PDF or the emailed version that you filled out last year. So your enforcement final progress report will have all of these questions that you'll need to answer. And there'll be the sections of OP, DUI, and DD. This fix is coming by tomorrow. It'll say DD. It's just a typo here. So that's what a final progress report for enforcement looks like. I'm not going to go into each of the final progress reports, but the education, it's a lot more narrative based. It'll have a bunch of questions and that you'll have to answer based on your activities and your performance measures. Just looking at my notes real quick. Okay, we wanted to take a quick look at the grant agreement, and I think Allison wanted to talk about that a little bit. So I'll bring up a copy of that.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle. Well, she's already got it up. Thank you. So we just wanted to share the grant agreement. We hadn't done this, gone through one. We're not going to go line by line by any stretch, but we did want to point out some significant things within the grant agreement, because this is really the crux of everything that we operate on. And so if you're ever in doubt, if you can purchase something, just a reminder, it's not what you asked for in the application, it's what makes it into this grant agreement. So The front page is a format that's adopted by the Agency of Administration that VTrans adjusts, but it does, it's us and your information and what is in this grant agreement, including those attachments that we were talking about. And it's important to note that this is last year's grant agreement. Do not take anything from this grant agreement in 2025 and give it to your sub-grantees or subcontractors. Wait until you get your 2026. Every year, NHTSA updates those attachments with us, and we have to sign them at a higher level, and then we synthesize them down. So you get a shorter version of them, if you can believe that. And then we put that into your grant agreement. So on the next page, we talk, it's got the signatures. Secretary Flynn is the only one here, or his delegate, who can execute the grant agreement. And then your authorized official executes. Please make sure. We've had some situations where chiefs didn't have authority from the municipality to sign, as an example. So always make sure that you're following your policies and procedures, that your AO in our GEAR system is the AO that should be in the system. And things we can fix, of course, but we want to make sure that these documents they're legally binding. So we want to make sure that they're accurate. And then this grant award detail information, a lot of administrative information is in there, from the federal award ID number to the funding source. It's like alphabet soup with the 402 funds and then the 405B, C, D, E, all of that we have to track. And Danielle does an incredible job on our end, tracking everything that we fund out to you in the award year. So you don't need to get too concerned about that. Your fiscal person knows more about those things. Project directors aren't tied to those as much. So then we get down into attachment A, which is another part of the standard Vermont, the scope of work and the performance measures. So federal money, we all know that things can change at the federal level. Thankfully, we are funded out of the Highway Trust Fund, and we from NHTSA, and we receive this money, but we have to, like we've said multiple times, we're data driven. We've got to show that we're good stewards of this money together. So we have these performance measures and the scope of work, and the work performed needs to tie back, like Evelyn was saying, to this part of the grant agreement. And then the progress reports, that's where you enter in how many of these things did you do. Any major change to a scope of work requires an amendment. So please don't just do something without communicating with your program coordinator. If it is a slight modification, that can probably be approved with an email. But if it's something completely new that's not mentioned as an activity, probably going to need an amendment. So communicate to us. And then down below attachment A are the payment provisions. And this is where I was talking about earlier about the budget and the items listed. So we will be reasonable. So if it says supplies and you're buying pens, so it doesn't say pens in here, we're going to most likely approve pens, as long as it's 100% highway safety related. But we pull from your application, like we have said, we couldn't fund everything. What we've been able to fund, the significant things we have listed here, and we try our best to get the training details from you. For example, like which one you're going to attend. We may not know the dates, but the titles, if we're able to fund it, it's here. It's detailed out, and your program coordinator on our side is looking at this to see, is it even listed here? And then if there's any significant change, like adding money, that requires an amendment. But if it's moving money slightly between categories, we try to do that minimally. We understand that things change. You applied to us back in the spring. Something may have changed. To reallocate funding should be kept at a minimum. But talk to your program coordinator, because that kind of stuff does not require an amendment. And then we talk about financial reporting requirements, the progress reporting requirements, everything that we have talked about in this presentation. It's in here. You've got to do it. It's required of the grant. if you want to get the money, you've got to follow all of the compliance of what NHTSA is requiring. So, whoever has the goal makes the rules. And so here is the information that we talked about. Some of this is word for word that we put in our training about, like, we're not eligible under travel and training to pay for certain things, job requirement trainings that have nothing to do with highway safety, for example. That came right from here because that's from a NHTSA memo. So while there are things in attachment C, D, and E, NHTSA is famous for putting out some mid-year memos. Things can change. And so not everything makes it in here. And that's why you really need to use your program coordinator to make sure that, in addition to all these things that Danielle is showing you right now, and in those attachments, the federal and state provisions, that something else didn't get missed. And we do try to, name those bigger things like the May 2016 memo and things of that nature in this document, but it's not always in there. So it's heavy stuff, but important stuff. And it binds both of us together to do great highway safety work. So like I said, please make sure that you wait until your 2026 agreement comes out before you copy anything into a sub-grant or subcontract with your partners. And you can use, there's a link for attachment C, which is the state provisions. So those change a little bit more readily than the federal ones should stay the same for one full year, even if they have modifications at the federal level with laws. But state of Vermont, I can't even, there's no schedule as to when they change things in attachment C, which are the standard state provisions. So a link in your agreements is acceptable because of the regularity of those changes. So thanks, Danielle. That's what I just wanted
All right,
to share.
I'm gonna just go back into the authorized official. So when you're in your application, since things will be going out for execution within the next couple of months, we want to make sure your authorized official is correct on your grant agreement, as Allison said. If it's, whether it's the chief that has the chief, the sheriff, your town manager, executive director, all depending on what type of grant or organization you are, you want to make sure the correct authorizing official is listed on the grant agreement. On this landing page or your applicant information page is where this authorized official will need to be listed. The person who is listed here is the one who's going to receive the DocuSign notification and be able to sign. If the wrong person is listed, then the document has to be pulled all the way back and resent through DocuSign. So in order to not have any delays in getting your agreement signed, please make sure that you've checked and that your correct authorized official is in this authorizing official section of the application in GEARS. So speaking of that, we'll go back into the presentation. Okay. So again, DocuSign for authorized signers. The authorized official will receive the email through from DocuSign to be able to sign the agreement. I did a training video last year that walks you through what to expect, and you can click on this link to watch that video. But the documents do go securely through DocuSign, and they'll come back into the SHSO and contract admin at VTrans for final execution. And then again, I showed that link on your landing page where your executed agreement will be uploaded once it has been signed by the secretary and is fully executed.
All right, we just did that and we'll skip ahead. So kind of what's next? Super excited. I don't know if I know you're all excited to hear. And I know that our state highway safety office team is to let you know that equipment and enforcement grants will be the first to roll out in mid to late November. I won't name a date at this point, but we're close. Like, incredible work has been happening and with our vendor, and you will not see what happened last year. So once those roll out, we will then, and it'll take about a couple weeks, maybe a week between programs, but then education. In this order, they will roll out education, the DRE, the Traffic Records Coordinating Committee grants. They'll all flow out. So it will take a couple weeks in between. A reminder that when grants get executed, there is some lag between invoicing, opening, and the execution of the grant. It is not instantaneous. There are things that contract administration must do, and there are things that we must do on our side too in order to get those invoices open. And so please give us a day or two. Your program coordinator is going to reach out to you as we start rolling these out. We kind of went, for lack of a better term, we babysit them. We send one or two out and we make sure that everybody gets the agreement. So, and we're walking, and tracking, because we can't test DocuSign in anything but the live production site. And we can't do it in the test site. So we are very careful as they start going out, and then they bulk go out because we know that things are operating correctly. We do need equipment letters if you've been approved for anything over $10,000 or more per item, like Rob was explaining earlier, to make operational. We have to get a NHTSA letter before you have a purchase order in place. So, or purchase the item. So please make sure we're doing extra things on our side to track that as well. But we need your guidance and assistance to make sure that your help to make sure that those letters are obtained and that we have them ready to go before you do that purchase order. We are still working with Agate to move data from our old system to our new system. We get, like we said last year, that you need to have retention, as we do, as part of that attachment D and E information. The feds require it, state requires it. So we will not let go of that old e-grants, old gears, as we affectionately call it, until we make sure that all compliance measures are met with retention. So that is the website in case you needed that in your old login. Just a reminder, if you end up getting yourself locked out of any gear system, either the old one or the new one, wait like 10 minutes and your password will reset. You don't need to contact us for that. And then I'm going to give my folks a moment after I read this slide real quick, if there's anything that they would like to additionally ask. But just want to remind folks that you're welcome to reach out to us at any point in time. I tell everybody I work with the best group of people ever. This group has a ton of experience. You don't always see that in other state highway safety offices where we retain our employees, and they're incredible people, and they've got a ton of job knowledge. So please lean on us if you need anything, and that includes our law enforcement liaisons, because Vermont is simply the best. Us and our partners, as we work together with NHTSA to roll out these programs. We have an incredible relationship with NHTSA Region 1. So some of you may have heard through in watching the news that federal programs and federal employees and have had cuts and things of that nature. Well, our Region 1 folks are incredibly responsive, and together we work very, very well with our partners to just have one of the best programs in the state. So just to know upcoming events, we have an occupant protection press conference at Heritage Toyota on Saturday, November 22nd. It starts at 10, will end at 1, and the press conference will start at 10:30 that day. And Bill Jenkins Kevin Lane is the contact for that, and the press releases are being worked on here with Rachel and our LELs. And then we have an occupant protection assessment. So this is a requirement for federal funding for the 405B occupant protection funds that we receive. So in order for us to continue to get that $300,000, it's a federal regulation because of our laws, that we have to enter into this OP assessment. So January 12th through the 16th, we will be holding virtual meetings, and Rob Bigelow, and Evelyn will be helping me organize that with NHTSA, as well as Stephanie Bush from VDH and some others from VDH. So we will be asking many of you to participate in that. So if you get request for some in-person time, virtual time, there are, I think, 8 different sessions within that week. But we'll let you know the times, and if you can participate, we would love for you to answer questions that the NHTSA assessment team is gonna ask, and we will let you know. There are, from communications to outreach to belt use and enforcement, and all types of processes. You're just explaining what you do, and it doesn't necessarily mean on grant time. So love to have your participation in that. And if you want to participate, reach out to Rob, Evelyn, or myself if you don't hear from us. And I think that is it. And I'm going to give folks a moment to from our team to just, if there's any last items that they want to bring up. All right. Well, thank you all for attending. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. We'd be happy to help.